Grace and peace and spoiler alert for Batman Mask of the Phantasm. For a long time regarded as the best Batman movie that had ever been made, and still top 3 easily. My name is Ryan. I'm the movie pastor. I watch movies and I think theologically about them. I pay attention to the themes and motifs that they demonstrate to us, and I read them the way I would read the Bible, paying attention to their meaning as a text and the ways we might interpret and apply them. Mask of the Phantasm is an excellent text for this, ripe with themes and motifs. It famously has that dark deco look from the Batman animated series. So we have literal shadows and light games going on in a cartoon. And it's a film that, as a lot of Batman stories do, deals explicitly with death. There's a Christian technique in dream interpretation. If somebody comes to you and says, what does this dream mean? I have this dream, I feel like it's significant. One of the kind of theories or schools of thought about how to help people work through that is to ask the question, well, if the dream were asking a question, what question do you think it would be asking? And then what's your answer to that question? I think if the Mask of the Phantasm asks any question, it's asking the question, what do we owe the dead? Of course, death looms heavily over this movie. It seems like most of the movie actually takes place in a graveyard. Both Andrea Beaumont and Bruce Wayne are dealing with grief over dead parents. They meet in that context. They meet in a graveyard. And both Andrea and Bruce respond to that grief with vigilantism. They both respond to that grief in the sense of obligation they feel like they have to their dead parents with a dedication to fighting crime. But tragically, their vigilantism is incompatible with one another. The convictions that Bruce has developed in the way he is going to be a vigilante are incompatible with the way Andrea is going to fight crime. And so they can't be together. But they're kind of perfect for each other because of that. So it's actually a really good, like, Romeo and Juliet story, right? Two houses both alike in dignity, but they can't and they won't. And so what does that mean? And the movie puts us for some time in the tension of, but why don't they just not? Like, what is the value in a normal life? Neither is willing to give up vengeance for the sake of love. Should they be? I think that's a live question. I mean, I think we should literally answer that question. Does the world need Batman? I mean, does our world need Batman? But also, does Batman's world need Batman? What would happen if Batman chose love? And if Batman shouldn't choose love, why not? Right? Like, if the world needs Batman, and so then therefore it is good that Batman rejects love, rejects the kind of life that really the work he does makes possible, then what does that mean for the rest of us? It connects with a concept that I find very evocative, the concept of the sin eater. Right? This is from kind of a Welsh traditional ritual, but it becomes represented in more places, the idea of eating someone's sin. And so in the ritual, right, you would like actually eat a meal as someone died in order to like take on their sin. But it also asks the question, for instance, suppose it were true, and frankly, I don't think it is. But suppose it were true that in order to maintain national security, we needed to torture some people, right? That in order to live safe private lives in the United States, there were some people somewhere who absolutely needed to be tortured or it just wouldn't work. Nuclear bombs would go off. Wouldn't then it be better to have only one person do that and everybody else not know about it? For someone to take the guilt, to become guilty of a terrible act, and then only that person has to be guilty of it, and nobody else does. And would that work morally, right? That's the same question we're dealing with when we ask the question, should Batman or should Andrea, should the Phantasm be the Phantasm? Is it right for someone to live the kind of life that other people can't or won't or shouldn't in order for the greater society to be able to accomplish that? I don't have an answer. I just think it's a fascinating question. And sometimes that's the better part of valor. Sometimes that's the better angle of theology. Of course, I should mention also that 1 Corinthians chapter 7 is an issue here. You know, Paul talks in the scriptures about his singleness. He says, I would that all men were even as I am. That is to say, unmarried. I, Paul, in the Bible say that if you are unmarried, I'd rather you don't become married. But if you have to get married, you know, have one wife and be faithful to her, or have one husband and be faithful to him. It's better to marry than to burn. If you just can't help yourself, here's a way to handle love in a way that is reasonably harmless. But if you can, maybe it would be better to dedicate your life to something greater than yourself. I think that is a fascinating question, and it's put into some light here. It's put into contrast between light and shadow. The film also asks a central question of the whole Batman narrative itself, and it asks it explicitly and diegetically. That is the question of hey, isn't Batman kind of a crazy person? Right? Like isn't what Batman's doing ultimately cuckoo? You know, he asks in the film to his dead parents, to these people who he feels he owes something to, hey, couldn't I just give money? You know, the Gotham PD could hire more police. And he feels that he gets the answer from his dead relatives. No, you can't. You have to do this in this particular way, which doesn't seem like a satisfying answer. And yet, despite that, it seems to me that we as an audience are meant to feel pleased. That by the end of the film, by the time we've traveled through this plot together, we are meant to be happy when we see in the last scene Batman swing off into the distance to go fight more crime. There will be a bit chagrined. There's some depth to that moment, but that we're happy. Oh yes, the world is as it should be. Batman can continue. It is kind of a classic TV serial moment, right? We've ended the episode at the same place we began it. Things are back where they are. Is that right? Is that as it should be, or did that thing that Batman struggled with mean something? Did he miss it? Did he miss the point and miss the opportunity and miss the woman? As we answer that question, I think it's worth asking the question about my life. What about my life as a pastor? What about my family who have to suffer through this kind of wild and woolly world of a pastor's kid, who don't get the experience of getting to sit in church as a normal family, but instead have to be a pastor's family? My faith that is so impacted by it. What am I sacrificing for the decisions I make and the contributions I try to offer? And what about your life? What are the ways in which you have sacrificed normalcy for the sake of influence? Was it worth it? Have you ever considered not doing that? These aren't rhetorical questions. YouTube is a social network. Talk to me. Put stuff down in the comments. Let's interact. And I'll see you next time on Movie Pastor.
And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be